My father got released from prison for serving 2 years and cleaned up his act for real this time. He has been clean and sober. Our relationship has never quite recovered, but it is not back in jail. Last summer, I was looking through Craigslist and happened upon a fine listing, painting of crockery in brown.
I don't believe it. We played right into Shinra's hands.
And sure as shit, it's jug on a stump. I know it's my jug on a stump because it had a really unique frame.
I think it's a false negative.
Never paint 2 of these.
Yeah, trying to blow it up.
I emailed the poster, but it was already sold. I hope that whoever bought it would treat her right. Later that day, my father stopped over for an impromptu visit, something he rarely does. I can't help but notice the large painting he carries as he walks in. I shook my head in disbelief. He had seen the listing just before I did and purchased jug on a stump for him. I have no recollection of this, but my mom tells me that when I was about 5, there was a news story commemorating the anniversary of the attacks on Pearl Harbor. After the story ended, I turned to her and gave her this 2-hour-long report about how I used to be a first mate on this ship, and I listed off its location before it sank. I described the crew, many I listed by name, the captain, even described the sights and smell of the area. Later that day, she researched it all at the local library and confirmed my story. To this day, I don't remember what happened, but she continues to talk about that moment, especially when I described my death. Either I am dealing with some form of memory loss, or I am dealing with a guy from an alternate timeline. I started college this week, and one of my classmates told me. On my first day of class, I was about 15 minutes late and sits next to me. During the break, he looks at me, smiles wide, and says, "It's been a long time. How are you?" I have zero recollection of who he is. He doesn't look or sound familiar, and I tend to not forget people even if they only played a very small role in my life. I asked him who he was and how he knew me. He told me his full name,
like a few of its
still not
components
ringing
are still
any
in
bells,
transit.
and said he knew me from a private school called Homeland Village, or something like that. He said that I was there to take a class in the
give ourselves an
Photoshop.
edge?
There should be
He
a
also
console
mentioned the
somewhere.
names of some of the other students, and he wrapped up his story with how we were at a Halloween party together once. I have 1, I never attended private school, or have even heard the name of the one you mentioned 2, never take a Photoshop class, and 3, I have never been to a Halloween party that had more than 6 good close friends. I was convinced that he had me confused for someone else. But here's the kicker, he knows me by a name that I no longer go by and described me with a very out there hairstyle that I haven't had in years. What the actual fuck? My university was bisected by a big lake with a wooden footbridge going across it, and it had a gazebo island in the middle. One night while walking up to the footbridge, I noticed a guy in a gray hoodie, with the hood up, walking across the section of the bridge closest to me, towards land, but I didn't think anything of him,
I'm
of
guessing
course.
that's some sort of component?
At that moment, a big oak tree next to the sidewalk I was on cut off my view of the bridge for a split second. When I passed the tree and looked back toward the bridge, the guy in the hoodie was just gone. He couldn't have possibly walked by me off the bridge because I would have seen him, and he couldn't have possibly had time to turn around and make it all the way back to the center island, either. He was just plain gone into thin air. And this gets better. When my friend came back from abroad the next semester, something in conversation reminded me of what I saw, and I started bringing it up and said I saw something weird on the bridge. His eyes lit up, and he asked, "Dude in a hoodie disappeared?" He said he saw something like that freshman year but never mentioned it because he thought his eyes were just playing tricks on him.
So far, so good.
When I was looking at colleges, I was walking down a stairwell to see a building when I passed a girl about my age. We both met gazes, passed, and then at the same time, stopped, turned back around, and looked again. For a moment, we just stared at each other. It was like I had just run into someone I had known my whole life but had never seen before. At the same time,
think they're
we
watching
asked,
us?
"Do I know you?"
Even now?
Confused,
Yep.
we spent a few moments
got a
trying to
live
figure
feed.
it out.
Nothing
We
we can do
swapped
about
names,
it.
shared where
Except
we were
smile
from,
for the folks
where we
around.
had traveled, but there was no match up at all. Nothing. She apparently felt the same way,
Stop me.
but she's known me all her life. We didn't know anything about one another, but there was this unexplainable, undeniable connection.
Keep it together.
Parents, who hadn't realized she had stopped and continued walking, came back and hurried her off before I could get her phone or email. Julia, if you're out there,
Give him your all!
in middle school, the entire 8th grade class had to do this thing called a cultural
never in
fair
doubt.
where we research our lineage/cultural roots and present it after school at night for all families to see. A buddy and I are cruising the empty halls out of boredom before the whole thing starts, and for some stupid reason, I bet him $10 I can open any locker, and he gets to choose which one. He takes my bet and picks a random locker. He jiggles the handle and spins the dial on us a few times to make sure it's locked. I remember it was locker number 424. So I look at it, both the SSSSHHH. Watch this. I spin it. 6 right, 24 left, 34 right. I remember thinking, these numbers sound right in my head. The last rip starts and it swings open. I had something like this happen in high school. History was always my thing, and I was doing well in class. The teacher decided to split people into teams for a group quiz, but he would pick the hardest questions he could think of. My group ended up winning with all the answers correct, mostly because of me, to be honest and immodest. So someone on the other team goes, Jesus Christ, Danger_McBoom, did you memorize
Any
the frickin' book?
Just the one.
He then opens
2
the textbook
choices.
to a random page
And
and
only one
asks,
single
what is the
use
little
card.
factoid on the
It's up
side of
to
the
you,
page
Cub.
on page 492? I had no idea, but right
What?
before the
What
quiz,
does an
I had
AI
my book
programming
open on a
code do?
random page and read a
Increases
little
processing
factoid
power
thing on the
dedicated
side.
to motor
I gotta
It was
call
about the
one out.
genocide in Rwanda,
Makes you move real
appropriately
quick.
titled
A real
Genocide in
quick
Rwanda.
giant robot, huh?
It was the only
That
thing I could
doesn't
think
sound
of,
good.
so I
Anyway,
replied,
we should weigh our
very
options
calmly,
carefully.
Genocide in Rwanda. His mouth dropped open, he slammed his book closed and said very matter-of-factly, fuck you. I have no idea what the chances would be of his opening to the exact random page my book had been opened to and ask about that one little
AI
paragraph I
programming
just happened
course
to
helped it
read.
be faster, right?
It remains my favorite
Diverted or
mindfuck
not?
to this day. I used to work in music and toured with this band. The guitarist, Josh, of the band's best friend, Matt, had died a couple of years back.
Flag for disposal.
He always talked about the kid, and he seemed like a great guy. Josh always had
That
this
should slow them down
recurring dream
some.
where Matt was standing on this abandoned
So
street,
where did we send the
which,
discarded stuff?
supposedly,
To a
was
storeroom
metaphorical
for
for
defective
purgatory.
equipment, I'm guessing.
Josh had all these conversations with Matt in these dreams, and because he had overdosed unexpectedly, he felt like his spirit was not able to move on. At the end of the dreams, Matt would take a bulb from the streetlight on the street they were standing in the middle of. Josh described these dreams in extreme detail, and I could pretty much picture what the street looked like. Fast forward to about 6 months into touring with these guys. They were huge Bright Eyes fans and wanted to stop in Casadega, Florida. Bright Eyes singer wrote an album there, and it's a really creepy, spiritual medium place. It might be worth noting that 6/7 of the people I was with are all atheists. So we drive into Casadega around 2 or 3 a.m. and drive around. Suddenly,
Barrett,
this big
who are
black
you
dog
talking
comes
to?
in the middle of the road and just stops and looks at us. The guys in this band were
1,000
weird
kills
as
just to
fuck
cut
and were
their
saying
salary.
things like, follow the dog. It's trying to show us something. And in my mind, I just think they are all fucking idiots. We follow this dog for a few blocks, and it was walking pretty slowly. All of a sudden, we try to freeze, and the dog goes. We try to speed up, but Josh says, stop the fucking car. This is it. We are all confused. We get out of the van and look around. This is it. This is the strange dreamers. We hung out for about 15 minutes, and from the way he described the street, from having found the van, it was definitely a street. As we get in the van, a street light goes on, and we just drive up. He claims to be the things in the dreams of the that was closing on everything. I used to work in a building that had 3 levels of sub-basements, with the piece of lab equipment I typically worked on in the lowest basement. I had the only key. There was a wired phone in there, and I did work late some nights. But not this night. I was sleeping alone in my apartment when I woke up to a call on my cell phone from my girlfriend at 3 a.m. She was in hysterics and asking why I scared her. Apparently, she received a call from that basement phone just a minute earlier. with someone who sounded like me, slowly repeating the name until crackling and fading out. My was 10 miles away from work. I saw the freeway and the car in the basement going long on the side. It still freaks me the fuck out. This just happened a couple of nights ago. Some friends and I were driving here in We were driving into LA, so traffic was kind of bad. We had 2 cars full of people, but we didn't bother trying to stay together on the road. The other car in front of us called us at one point and asked if we had hit the traffic yet.
Find
Luckily,
any cards?
we hadn't,
Only one.
so we got off the next exit and took side streets. An hour later, we got home and checked up on the other car. They said that nothing had moved, all the cars were turned off, and people were walking around on the freeway like some kind of zombie movie, so they were already kind of freaked out. The helicopters and hordes of cop cars didn't ease the tension either. Back at the house, we were looking online to try to figure out what happened but couldn't find anything, so we started joking about there being aliens, and the government was trying to cover it all up. Eventually, we found a report on SIG Alert, an official California Highway Patrol website, that a silver Honda Accord had stalled in the carpool lane right where traffic was stopped. We took a screenshot of it and sent it to the other car. 5 minutes later, we get a call from the other car.
AI program.
Did you see the report we sent you? Us, yeah. But did you just
What
find
do you
them?
think?
Cause traffic barely started moving a minute ago, but right after I read the report, we were in the carpool lane, and it suddenly stopped. I looked up, and a silver Honda Accord stopped right in front of us. Then the guy got out and popped the hood and is currently trying to figure out why his car stalled. We still have no idea what actually happened. Nobody reported it, and it didn't get covered on any of the news stations that night. So this one is all about my brother. First of all, my parents named him Samuel. As in the prophet, the guy who hears God calling his name.
You don't?
There's a story behind this too. But anyway, on 2 separate occasions, he has had really strange foresight.
Oh
The
no.
first was
If
when
you're
my
about to
mom's
ask
brother
me to
died.
dance, then don't.
Nobody in the family knew.
Don't be shy.
But when my brother woke up that morning,
about you,
he
Cloud?
said to my mom,
I don't dance.
somebody's going
I
to
don't
die.
dance.
My little bro is a really quiet kid and doesn't really say weird shit. My mom was thoroughly freaked out and thought she had a crazy son. Later on, we find out that her brother died. The second was on September 11th, 2001.
Oh shit. Look at
Little
that.
bro was 4 at the time, and he also woke up that day, and he said to my mom, "People are going to die today." Mom was really freaked and
I remember
started
these were
praying
like
for
the
my
best
brother,
ones, I think.
thinking he was crazy beans. And then 9/11 happens. These may not be that significant, but we all think my bro's a little psychic. My dad had this little toy monkey that he used to call his favorite child and tease my siblings and me with it. Not in a bad way, but it was really frustrating for us, and we spent hours trying to steal it from him. Well, anyway, one day, we finally got it and threw it into the garbage after drawing on it and mangling it for a bit. My dad laughed and searched for it a bit but basically figured we had thrown it out and gave up after a week or so. Anyway, a few years later, when I was about 17, I'm walking down the street in Toronto, I don't live in 2, was just visiting friends, and see this little orange object on the side of the road. When I walk over to it, I pick it up and see that it was the exact same fucking monkey. It even had the black Sharpie lines on it from when we drew all over it. I honestly cannot even come up with the chances of that happening, especially considering our garbage is sent to a local dump and is nowhere near Toronto. Not sure if this relates, but about 2 years into my relationship with my GF, we'll call her Susan, I had a dream about my ex. The dream went like this: I was in my room, at my mother's house, where I lived at the time, slamming my ex, balls to the wall, sexing it up. I knew I was cheating on Susan but didn't care. So in the middle of it, I look over to the window, which you can see the back porch from, and Susan is there, watching us, crying and mortified. I then woke up. I thought it was a weird dream but dismissed it. A few days go by, and Susan and I are hanging out in my room. She brings up this weird dream she had a few days prior and describes my exact dream except from the POV looking through the window.
Copy.
It freaked me the fuck out. I didn't say anything.
Oh, I
about
should have
it.
left it around there.
I still haven't said anything. 5 or 6 years later. It still weird to me. And it's still happens to this day. Not sure if it exactly fits as a list of my life, or perhaps a past life type of thing. I have only ever shared this with a few people in my life, so you enjoy the internet. Anyway, when I was around 5 years old, my father, his girlfriend at the time, and I visited a theme park. While we were walking around, I saw this girl my age and instantly recognized her. I didn't know her name or where I knew her from, I just knew that I knew her and I had missed her. The look in her eyes when our eyes meet instantly told me that she recognized me too. We both ran towards each other and embraced in a tight hug in that cliché reunited way, and started excitedly talking.
An AI
I remember
programmer.
looking up at our parents,
Should we
and they were
discard
talking
this
to
or
each other
something
and
else?
shrugging and laughing, like WTF? Our parents allowed us to walk around with each other for a while and eventually ride the tram thing to another part of the park. I remember when we rode on the tram, they let us sit in our own seat in front of them, and we held hands. I remember, eventually,
Yeah,
our parental
that'll do.
units made us part ways
That'll
in
do.
the immense desire I had to not let her go. We hugged some more, and went our separate ways, never to meet again that I know of. As I said, I have never forgotten this or found an explanation for it. When I was stationed in Italy, I had my own house in Pordenone. It was a 3-bedroom, way too much space for a single guy like me. I slept in the living room by my TV as the back bedrooms and hallway were always cold and always gave me creepy vibes. But that's beside the point. I had a dream one night of a golden-haired child. He was running out of that back hallway
Heidegger's
into
not
the
gonna
living
like
room
that.
for protection. I
Think we've
scooped him
done
up as
enough to
demons
weaken the
lumbered from the
robot?
hallway
All that
and
we
the
can,
corners of
at
the
least.
living room. They had surrounded us. I ran to my side door leading to the porch, but Cerberus was there. Then I ran to the front door, but they were coming down
We're
the street
coming
as
up
well.
on the exit.
At this point,
Tifa,
the child
detonator
began to
still in
glow
range.
incredibly
We should be
bright,
good.
and the demons
The moment
hissed and
Big Boy goes
disappeared.
down, you hit
I woke
that
up.
switch.
A week
Right.
later, I found a golden hair on my uniform jacket that was hanging on the dining room chair. I didn't know anybody with curly long blonde hair, certainly nobody that came over forever alone, but there lay this singular hair. I ignored it, but another week later, I found another singular blonde hair on my couch pillow. It made me pause, but I still ignored it until a couple of weeks later, I was walking down the hallway
Obviously.
and saw a nearby shop light up and spotted singular blonde hair curling out of a little bit. I still find little golden hairs in the when I was in my sophomore year of high school, there was a cute blonde girl who I few of the guys were interested in. There was nothing serious about her. She was just fairly funny. Average girl. Anyway, this girl was an exchange student from Germany, and after several months of being in our class, she simply stopped dating. It was obvious I started to wonder why. I asked one of my friends if maybe she had moved back, but he said he had no idea who I was talking about, and I soon came to learn that no one did. I still don't know if I have dreamed the whole episode, and maybe my subconscious is playing a trick on me, or if someone actually went missing from my history class who everyone spontaneously forgot. So I was working in a White Pages call center where people call from all over the country. I live in Greece, and ask for telephone numbers and other information. My shift was 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. There were about 2,000 of us every single second receiving calls non-stop. At the time, we were not provided with caller ID or any other information about the caller. We just heard a beep, and the line opened automatically. A cousin of mine who also lives in Greece and I hadn't spoken to for months, he didn't even know I worked there,
Can't
calls
say we
to ask
didn't
for my
prepare.
parents' number to ask my
Now
father
we just gotta
something.
get it done.
I get the call. After the first excitement and laughs, we hang up the line. Not more than 10 minutes later in the meantime, I have
That
answered
just leads
6 to
back
7
down.
lines.
Oh,
He calls back
yeah.
because, in the first call, he forgot to actually ask for the number. I answer his second call too. A couple of months later, this same cousin is in another city and wants to change internet/phone provider. So he calls the information number again. This particular day I was covering a friend's shift and was working 3 p.m. minus 7 p.m. About 1,500 other people answering phones with me. I get his call again. He still swears that he has called
Look, they're
this
still
number
prepping
only
it.
these 3 times in his life.
They're here!
Not
Pull
as
them back!
creepy as
Buy
other
us
Reddit
every
stories,
second you can!
but still. The odds are phenomenal.
Status of my airbuster. Report.
I used to work at Speedway for over a year and such. I started smoking there. Had a nervous breakdown. Oh, by the way, it was the Speedway right beside the ghetto. Anyway, when I was working on myself, I was so friendly and I even told by myself. You were one of my usual customers that come in to ask for a piece of Marlboro Red.
I'm ready whenever.
Now, having worked for a while, my way of grabbing the cigarettes and throwing them onto the car has become quite successful.
We too late.
This particular
far
time,
enough, you
I grabbed
bastards.
between
I'm
my
taking you
index
down.
and middle finger and swung my arm down and pulled my
Down
thumb.
again.
But as my arm came down and hit it, the pack left my fingers and hands. They were throwing me the wall. Did not feel the open security door that was behind it. The customer stood there just as dumbfounded as I was. And the two of us stood in total silence before I slowly grabbed the pack and re-attempted self-stun, just to hear what it would have sounded like.
Hey guys.
It made an on-top noise, you know. The kind of sound you would expect a pack of cigs to make if it hit something.
Looks like a performance
So
assessment.
I sold him the pack.
Don't you think? Reduced
Still,
response
a bit freaked out and then proceeded
work
to
in our
check the
favor.
entire store for that
Real
lost
though,
pack.
we need to talk victory.
I
folks.
even went across
Something
the store
coordinated.
Mother trucker.
and so forth. You know,
Could blow up
a
big.
distance that
Start
would be
a new
impossible
trend.
for the pack to travel. Nothing though, it was cool, I guess. Still kind of freaky. I have other similar stories about things
No
like
way
this,
we're getting back
such
on
as
that
water
pipe.
cups that had
Keep
vanished on
looking.
me. Chocolate. Childhood toys, that is. Now that I think about it, this sort of thing happens to me. Maybe I'm young. Sweet. It's a very big and beautiful city, and ironically, also the city in the Matrix, same street name, etc. One of my hobbies on extremely nice days is to go downtown
Keep it
and
together.
follow different people around to see what they're doing. I think this is called being a runner in French, and I've experienced some really real people that could be equated to Matrix glitches, even though I've never really thought before. The one that stands out in my mind is the most Matrix signal. You ready? It was a Saturday, and I was down for hardcore training. The session was wrapping up at around 6 p.m. Everyone was getting ready to go home or somewhere else. I was sitting in a large tree like the garden was looking down extremely around, watching literally all day. He was in his late 20s, I'd assume. Thin but muscular, and wore something like pink short-sleeved collared shirt and cargo shorts. He just sat there for the entire 8 hours and didn't fucking move aside from maybe At this point, only 4 people were left lingering. 1 tracer, his 2 female and myself. The man got up, went over to the group of 3, said something. It looked intense, and the 2 girls just rolled upright while the 1 male threw his hands up in the air and held his hands to his side. They were just out of earshot. I jumped down from my seat and over to the trio. Apparently, the man had left, and I saw him walking rapidly down the street, the main street of downtown Chicago. I was intent on following, but I wanted to make sure he wasn't crazy first. When I got to the remaining 3 youths, the 2 girls just stood there in the same position they were before, completely quiet. I asked about the man, to which the male replied, sounding rather offended, "What man?" "It's just me and these 2 here." For a brief moment, his face took on a strained look as if trying to remember the man.
Don't screw this up.
Remember the
What?
man.
Yeah, you should leave this thing
I turned and jogged down the stairs towards Mission Avenue. I looked left and right, then left again, and right again. I couldn't front the guy. He had been less than a minute since he began walking.
Let's go.
And he was already out of sight. He could have crossed the street, but he would still have been waiting for a break in the traffic to do so. Other than that, the street was weirdly void of pedestrians. There was an open parking lot right in front of the traffic to my left, and not a man in sight. Then I heard a scream from behind me
give
and
it our all
ran
and
back to
move
the
in.
park to see the 2 girls looming over the guy. I pushed them back and saw the male. who had slumped over, out cold and drooling a mixture of blood and spittle. He looked like he had just been beaten badly, just really had the snot knocked out of him. He was a pretty big guy, one of the most muscular guys I know. He could have taken 2 or 3 of anyone else in the park, no problem, but there he was, down for the count. I asked the girls if they had seen what happened. They said he was talking to himself and then just fell over. I told one to call an ambulance and continued to question the other one. I asked about the man. They said they don't remember any man. I asked if they remembered me coming over there. They didn't remember that either. Very odd. The ambulance arrived very shortly after and took the slumped over mess away on a stretcher as I sat there trying to explain, in detail, the events of the last 10 minutes to these girls who were just not believing about the man in green and pink.
That goes for you too, Cloud.
When I first moved into my new house when I was 18, my black lab Ace was anxious to finally get a chance to explore.
Price is right.
He has been restrained so he wouldn't get hurt during the unpacking process. He excitedly ran up and down the stairs, checking out rooms and sniffing at toilets in the bathrooms. We all went downstairs to the basement, but when we turned back to see where he was just standing at the top of the stairs staring at us.
Is there any way we can get it open?
He wasn't panting or wagging his
from
tail.
that room over there.
We called for him to come down with us, but no matter what we did, he still just stood there looking scared.
Why does
We
everything
picked him
have
up
to
and
be
carried
so
him
damn
down with us.
complicated?
You
While
know,
he
the
was
faulty
down there,
equipment store
he
room's
was
that way
completely
too.
scared, so we brought
Do you
him back
think we'll
up.
find the components
Several
we
months
diverted
had
there?
passed, and he continued
It's
to
like
be
a
scared of the
treasure
basement.
vault. I like the
While I
sound of
was on
that.
the laundry side of the basement, I noticed there was a panel beneath the stairwell that could be moved.
So how do we do this?
I moved it aside and found
It's
empty
simple.
space with a solitary ceramic
the
doll
levers at
laying in
the
the
same
center
time.
of it, staring with
these
a blank
ones.
gaze in my direction.
I'll take left.
I removed it and
Which
took it
just leaves
upstairs,
right, soldier
throwing
boy.
it away in the trash outside. The very next time my dog came inside with us, he followed me down the stairs to the basement without a second thought and continued to till the day he died.
Emergency lockdown
This still
is
unnerves me to
currently
this
in
day.
effect.
So we need to synchronize our movements?
I was using my
In that
desktop
case,
computer.
follow my lead.
The internet was working
Tifa's.
perfectly
Fine,
fine,
have it your way.
and after about 30
Okay,
minutes,
pay
it
attention,
fucks
you
up
two.
on me.
3,
I lost
2,
the connection.
1.
I tried resetting the router and restarting my computer a couple of times, and it did not work. I looked at my router again and
We got
noticed that
this.
there were only
3,
2 Ethernet
2,
cables.
1.
One was going to my Xbox, and the other was going to the modem.
Second try.
Emergency lockdown
There wasn't a cable
disengaged.
going to the desktop. I looked behind the desktop,
Gotcha.
and the cable was connected,
Now
Sure.
that is
but
what
the
I call
other end was
teamwork.
nowhere near the router.
Go team.
Someone had to have moved it in order for it to be where it was. My router is on the
What,
floor.
you got
It's
tucked
not
away?
on
What's
the
up,
top
buddy?
of the desk. So the way I see it, I was receiving a phantom internet
This would
signal
be
for
the
20 minutes
treasure
before
vault.
it died.
That's right.
My desktop
What's the
has no
catch?
Wi-Fi
Need to
capabilities.
bypass a high-level security lock.
A
Different
mate and
from
I
the
are
other
sitting
one?
in a McDonald's.
Same deal.
We always
we gotta
ordered
do
out
it
so as
several
not to get a
times.
shitty plastic tray for the food,
Tight
but
wads.
we'd eat it
But
anyways.
hearing that just makes
So
me want to
we
rob
finish
a
eating, and my mate jolts
Yeah,
his left leg,
let's stick it to
and
him.
a tray appears at his feet.
Let's go.
We
Let's
have
try it
no
out.
idea where it came from. We looked about, and no one seemed to be missing one slash
Delta
laughing.
level security lockdown
As
is
far as we
currently in
both know,
effect.
his leg
Okay,
created
guys.
a tray.
You
Edit.
know what we have
One
to
more
do.
I just remembered.
Copy me?
I said goodnight
No,
to my
Tifa
flatmate.
leads.
I remember
Oh,
it being around
fine.
11 p.m.
After you, girl.
As I
Gotta
stripped
get
off
past
for
level
bed,
1 first,
I remember
right?
hearing my flatmate's
3,
music
2,
playing.
1.
I turn off the light and jump.
Ah, I pushed down.
Watch
I get comfortable
carefully.
and roll onto my right-hand side, and my heart stops as I see some short
Shake it off.
bipedal creature
3,
walking straight through
2,
the wall right next to
1.
my bed. I freak and roll to my left to see another creature walking through the wall to my left.
Still getting warmed up.
I leap out of bed and hit the lights, and the room is empty. The
Focus.
music from my flatmate's room is
3,
also
2,
gone,
1.
and I start freaking out.
Oh,
Way
what?
down the hallway and knock gently on my
Breathe when I
flatmate's door.
breathe.
He tells me to come in, and he's wondering what the fuck I'm up to.
Shake it off.
He had thought I
3,
had gone to bed
2,
hours ago and had
1.
turned his music off to accommodate that. He's right.
Don't rush it.
Hours have passed, and it's now after 1 in the morning.
We got this.
I slink back
3,
to my room
2,
with my heart racing.
1.
A weird night for sure. I'm a
Breathe
bit
when
late
I
on this,
breathe.
but twice in my life, I have encountered experiences with myself
Shake it
as a
off.
younger person.
3, 2,
Both times
1.
I was with people who did not see the person I saw. Once in middle school, I passed
Still
myself
getting warmed
walking
up.
home.
How about a
He
chance
was
to
a
help
little
us
boy
time
who
it
looked
right?
exactly like me. Exactly. He had my
Ugh,
same favorite
this is
shirt on and was
exhausting.
wearing a blue towel as a cape, just as I did.
We'll get
The
it
same
this
hair
time.
color.
3,
Mine is dark
2,
brown now,
1.
but I was blonde as a child. He was running full force, and when he saw me, he stopped, just as I did. We didn't say anything.
3,
It just
2,
happened.
1.
My friend was walking behind me, about 100 feet, and didn't see any
Breathe
of
when I
this.
breathe.
Later in university, I was in a dining hall and saw myself as
We
a
got
high school
this.
student.
3,
Myself,
2,
only about
1.
5 years younger. Same jeans, the exact same plaid shirt that I wore until
Still
it had
getting warmed
holes.
up.
Same hairstyle, everything. Even the
Shake it
same
off.
color bag,
3,
worn on the
2,
same shoulder.
1.
He looked completely lost. Our eyes
Don't
met,
rush it.
only for a second. Then he walked out of the dining hall.
Focus.
I yelled to him,
3,
and my
2,
friend sitting with me
1.
thought I was crazy for yelling at someone who wasn't there.
What?
Got an
Mine's
idea.
not too out there, but it made an already great day even funnier. I was biking around the
Oh my
neighboring town,
God.
Elora, with
How
some
about this
friends,
deal?
and we were going to go to the local gorge for a swim. We picked up a case of 12 cream sodas and
We're
tried
doing
to
it my
bike with
way.
them on one of our
3,
handlebars.
2, 1.
Of course, this was a terrible idea, and as we got to the crosswalk, it falls over and
Still
breaks
getting
open,
warmed up.
and the cans go everywhere. We managed to, coincidentally,
this.
save 9,
3,
and there were
2,
3 of us,
1.
so 3 each. Not bad. JPG.
What the
Anyways,
fuck?
as we're
When I
biking,
breathe.
I, being paranoid about dropping things again as I am,
Shake it off.
count the ones I'm
3,
holding.
2,
Only 2?
1.
I asked my friends to count theirs, they each have
Shit.
3. I am a little miffed, but one less cream soda for me wasn't a big deal.
Focus. 3.
So I checked
2,
my pockets,
1.
everything, and no cream
Alpha
soda.
level secured.
I
Okay.
figured it must have
I
fallen
gotta
out.
actually.
Great, you guys.
Now,
Fuck.
as we park
Let's
our
keep
bikes
it
in the
up.
nearby forest trail, I hop off my bike, and as I do,
All right.
I kick a
3,
cream soda can it
2,
was sitting near
1.
my foot. I didn't hear one
Data
fall,
level security
and it wasn't rolling down the
disengaged.
slope of the trail.
Wow.
It was just
Think
sitting
we've
there.
got this?
I asked if
Hell yeah,
either of my
bring
friends
it
had dropped
on.
one of theirs because
Ain't
I had
nothing
both
I
of
love
mine
more
still.
than sticking it to shit.
They said no. The mysterious cream soda can that had vanished returned to me
Halfway
at
there.
my feet when we stopped
Steady,
biking.
guys. 3.
I thought about this
2,
for a second and
1.
wondered if I had put one in my water bottle holder
No!
on my bike. It seems logical,
Still getting
except that
warmed
there
up.
was already a water bottle in its place. We decided it was a
We got
wormhole,
this.
but
3,
a glitch in the matrix
2,
is just
1.
as likely.
Gamma level security.
Okay,
Disengaged.
such an interesting
Oh,
thread.
thank God.
I had to
You guys are
register to tell this
naturals.
thing that happened to me. It happened 2 days after I turned 8.
Okay, final round.
I live in
Don't
Finland,
lose focus.
and we had just moved
3,
into town.
2,
Our
1.
apartment was in these cheap rental high-rises.
Don't rush it.
My grandma had given me
I
a few
think I should
comic
leave
books as
after
a
all.
present, and I had been reading them
5,
ever
4,
since the
3, 2, 1,
party.
go.
Quite a stack,
Much better.
something like 10 to 15 individual comics. There was this
Let's
one
just
book,
get through
a
this.
Spider-Man comic.
3, 2.
It wasn't about
1.
the usual Spidey, but something about Peter Parker's
Ah.
and Spider-Man. At least that's how it was translated to Finnish. I had just returned
it
from
off.
school,
3,
so my parents
2,
were still at work,
1.
and I started reading this comic.
Yeah.
At
No.
some page,
Fuck.
our detective
Breathe
is
when
crouching
I
on a
breathe.
roof, jumps down, and lands into the Spidey crouch, hands between his
Focus.
legs.
3,
Without
2,
thinking anything,
1.
I just laid down the comic, walked to our balcony, and climbed on the
Delta
fence
level
using a
security.
chair as a ladder.
Disengaged.
Ugh.
As I was sitting
Disposal
there,
room now
I
at
see
Fuck
some
me.
man down, and across the street, he saw me sitting there and started running
Finally.
towards our house.
I was
At
beginning to
this same
think it
moment,
never ends.
I had this really
Hey,
calm
you
feeling
Cloud,
taking over
what's
me.
the deal?
I took a deep
You
breath,
really a bona
closed my
fide
eyes,
soldier?
and jumped down.
We didn't train for
When I
this
jumped,
stuff.
I could hear the man scream
All
a
that
jump
marching with no rhythm? How
One,
did you
no,
soldier on?
followed by an abbreviation
Okay,
to God
that's
help
enough
me.
of that. Let's
Then I
see
just
what's
heard the wind
inside.
in my
That took
ears.
forever.
The next thing I know, I'm on the ground, crouching like a Spider-Man.
Ooh.
The man runs around some high bushes just when I stand up, stops dead on his tracks, and all color escapes his face. He just stood there with absolute terror in his eyes, completely silent and looking at me for a few seconds before backing away slowly, without turning his
Score.
face off me
It's
before he's
just
back
like
in the
concept.
corner, where he turns away.
They say a
I
job
returned to
well
the
done,
lower
soldier.
door only to
I
find out I
say
had
take
left my key
everything that ain't
inside.
nailed down.
So I just sat down and waited for my father to return from work, something like 1 hour. He was naturally surprised to find me there, without my backpack. I told him what had happened. Dad, I'm Spider-Man, when we were in the elevator. Dad thought it was just my imagination. When we returned inside, and he saw my comic book laid open on the ground, with the page featuring the jump and the balcony door left open, he took away the particular comic book and never allowed me on the balcony before I turned 12, and we moved to a bit better house, the 3rd floor. He also becomes disoriented every time I mention this to him and changes the subject quickly. Although he does admit he found me downstairs, and the balcony door was open. I still remember this occasionally, clear as day. My mom and I both dream about the same place. It's a 3-story white house. We usually dream about the house on the same night so that in the morning, we have conversations like so. The house was in the Midwest last night. Yeah, I know. Was the laundry out on the line yet? No. The clothespins were rotten. The first time we found out that we had been dreaming about the same house was the day my ma came out and said, I just had the most terrifying dream ever. I was in a big, square, 3-story house in the woods, and I was just investigating it. I think I was going to buy it. I went up to the 3rd story and got lost and then ran into this idiot man-child.
All right, time to
Mom,
go.
was he wearing a blue work shirt and suspenders? Did he sleep on the mattress in the back room? Yes. Was the 3rd story kitchen floor rotting through?
Huh?
Yes. The conversation went on for hours as we went into minute detail. Everything, and I mean everything, matched up. We ended the conversation with each drawing a picture of the house.
The eyes of one who has
So
bathed
yeah,
in mother,
there's that.
which would make you a soldier.
My father died in 2008.
Soldier.
A night
Once a
before visiting
soldier,
his house for the
always
last
a
time,
soldier.
he appeared in
But
my
not,
dream,
alas,
where he handed me a
for
black
very
camera
long.
and a plastic bag and specifically said,
Accelerated
take this
cellular
camera, as I won't be needing it
degradation, the
anymore,
most common
and I
cause
took it
of
from
death
him.
by far.
First thing in the
This
morning,
is
I
classified,
visit his
of
house,
course,
where
when
most of
every
the stuff is
soldier
already
knows
moved by my uncle,
That's right.
and open one of his wardrobes, find a sealed cardboard
you for
box deep
getting
inside,
someone.
rip it open with a knife and take out a black camera. Apparently, my uncle missed that one and took off all his other electronics with the camera. All I can say is that this experience was a proper communication, and it significantly
And
eased
what a
my
wasteful
pain,
indulgence
knowing that
it
something
would be
remains after a
if
loved
there
one
were.
passes.
Okay.
I was a sophomore in HS at
Let's
my
talk
GF's
about
house,
wasteful
watching a movie.
What is
It was around 10 p.m. when the flick ended. I proceeded to skateboard home. I only lived like 2 blocks away,
But Shinra
and it was a
keeps
pretty
on slurping
quiet
it up like
suburban
a thirsty
neighborhood.
dog.
I'm
What do you
skating
think's
down the
gonna
hill
happen
towards
if
a
you don't
larger
stop,
street.
huh?
Larger but never really busy, especially not at night. When I reach the intersection, I nail a rock. I had planned on blasting across the street since there were no cars coming in either direction. I fly off the board, skid a good 3 or 4 feet on my head, right shoulder, hip, and knee.
As you must
I rolled to my back and screamed out in agony.
Don't you dare try to
The
put
pain
this
was
on
so
us.
bad I couldn't really move.
If anyone's going
I
along with
looked
your
up the
plans,
road,
it's
and about
got you
30 yards off is a
brainwashed.
car coming down the
Such
way.
methods are beneath
And where I landed, I was right in its path, 2 lane street. I was right in the middle of his lane. My head was aligned with the wheel. I tried like hell to move. I
Thank you
screamed.
for stoking our
I
people's
yelled.
patriotic fervor.
I couldn't do anything. The car was about 15 yards
Move
off.
time. The
He
hell
doesn't
we
see
are.
me. Makes no attempt to swerve. 10 yards.
You still don't
I
understand
hear
your
him
role
barreling
in
down.
this.
I close my eyes. Brace. Nothing.
What did they
Open
do?
eyes.
Don't you see?
Look where the
You
car had
fools
been.
were never in control.
Nothing.
Never anything
Here the
but
car behind.
pawns in our plans to
Look
sell
where it was
great and
supposed to be in
glorious
the other
war
direction.
to the people.
Tail lights cruising up the road.
And your
I hadn't moved.
instruments of
He didn't
insurrection will
swerve.
detonate.
It was like he passed through me or I passed through him. There isn't really any way he could have passed over me.
What the
Not
fuck?
the way I had landed and was positioned in the street. It was a little car.
Damn it.
I can't explain it.
Now let us
I got
raise the
up,
curtain
terrified,
on our main event.
bloody, and baffled. I hobbled home and went to sleep. No one believed me. But it's fucking true. My dad used to get up around 3 a.m. every morning for work. Starting at a very early age, I would wake up on my own and wander downstairs to see him
Your
before
guilt
he
is
left.
undeniable. Your
One morning when I
punishment
was
is
about
death.
4 years old, I made it to the bottom of the stairs and noticed that the front door was ajar. I opened it up and saw my father's favorite work shirt, making his way
stop
down the
that,
driveway to his
dun,
truck in a typical work outfit, plaid shirt and dickies. I swung the
sick of
door
this.
open wide and yelled for him to come back for a hug before
I'm
he left.
sick of all of this.
He slowly turned around and just stared at me and started walking back towards the house. He was looking so strangely
Get your
at me
head
that
in
it
the
started
game.
to scare me, and I began crying and asking what was wrong. Just as he had almost reached me, A pair of arms encircled me from behind in a bear hug. I
Are you
turned my
alright?
head to see my understandably freaked out father staring at his down the bank. And he said nothing. The double took one look at my back and ran down the hall. My dad yanked me in the house and locked the door. Weirdest morning ever. I never did quite figure that one out. I would not have a clear-year-old memory of the event if it wasn't also witnessed by my father. I didn't really talk about it. But my mom has since told me that it's all out.
Don't overdo it.
I have two stories that are just as weird as fuck. Both of them are things I just would not believe if someone else told me. So I can swear with every fiber of my being that they happened as I write them. The first happened a couple of years ago. I can't remember the occasion, but my mother and I had gone to A&W for lunch, and we were both sitting there reading the news. We happened to be seated pretty close to the watchroom doors, so I noticed everyone going in and out. The first person to come out is this old man who's kind of hobbling along. He walked out, and I looked at him and went on with my meal. Not 30 seconds later, another man comes out, and at this point, I get a little freaked out because I realize it's the exact same person. Same ring, clothing, face, everything. A couple of minutes later, the same thing happens, except it's an old woman this time. She comes out, then 30 seconds later comes right out of the bathroom. My mom took a look at me and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I just kind of took what it in, then wrote it off as me being crazy. The next day is and is the single strangest occurrence of my life. This happened when I was about 9 years old, but I can still remember it. Vividly, we were visiting family in Nevada with my dad, and they lived out in a very dry area in a fairly good-sized trailer. A couple of days in, I was playing outside with my cousin, pretty much just messing around in the field. At some point, I look up. Right next to the house is the field, I guess, surrounded by a wire fence, probably originally for livestock. But anyway, there's this guy standing there. This is a good 300 or more feet away, so I cannot see him clearly. Truly weird, as soon as I look at this guy, or what I can only describe as an out-of-body experience. My body pretty much just went into lockdown, and I was no longer seeing him.
I hate when they do that.
And I wasn't just floating around or anything. I was in that man's body. Through his eyes, I could see two little shapes playing across the field, but I could just feel that I saw the shapes around the field. And then I realized he was holding a fucking gun. After that, all around my body blurted out. He had to be my offering no explanation to my cousin, who thought I was nuts. I didn't tell anyone because I just didn't know how to express it to other people back then.
It's on you.
I've only since told my brother, but I don't think they will. It still freaks me out when I think about it today because it's the only time I've ever lost control of my body. It was almost like a dream, but the whole thing felt like it was happening in slow motion. I'm making the bus, it's just a street I was a Saturday night, and I was driving between two small towns in North Carolina, Statesville, and Taylorsville.
Steady.
It's about a 20-minute drive of a perfectly straight two-lane road with pretty much nothing but trees on either side. It's the middle of the day, and I'm driving along listening to Howard Stern on news, and all of a sudden I go from wide awake to falling asleep. Meaning, 1 second, I'm normal,
Now we can hit
and a
it where it
second later,
hurts.
my head is drooping down and eyes closing, and what snaps me out of it is my car bounces like I just hit a speed bump, but I'm still in the middle of the road. Howard Stern is saying the same sentence, but my GPS is and I'm doing and when I come back, I realize I am about 12 miles further down the road than I was, and I had missed my turn by 5 miles.
You're up.
An immediate thought, even though I consider myself a level-headed atheist, was that I fell asleep, hit a tree and died, and was now in some near death. It was such a strong feeling that I drove to the nearest express. To my relief, she did, and I bought a Red Bull. I still think I was hypnotized by the road and drove on some weird autopilot for a while, but losing GPS signal and not missing any of Howard Stern is explainable to me. I even made a serious ability to do and there was none of the show that I missed. In case you're wondering, my butthole felt fine. I was walking through Best Buy one day a couple of years ago, and I walked past a random book. Sitting on the rack was the last book in the Dark Tower series from Stephen King. The front cover had a picture of Raymond in front of a tower with the field of roses behind him. I held the damn book in my hand and looked it over. I remembered being puzzled about why it was in a Best Buy, but whatever. I'd read the first 6 and had been waiting for the last one, and spending money to go to read. I set it down and decided to come back next week. I went back next week, and it wasn't there. It slipped my mind after that for a bit, but about a month later, I then to get my copy. They told me it was not issued. The release date for the book was 6 months later.
Damn, all those
I
strokes.
pre-ordered it then.
Time to do your thinking.
When the book actually came out, I went to pick it up. I described the cover out loud to make sure I wasn't crazy. The book handed it to me, and I was exactly as I sold it in Best Buy. My husband and I met in our late 20s. We grew up near each other but went to different high schools and colleges, were a few years apart, and hung with completely different crowds. My parents put in a bid on the house next door to his parents when I was about 11. It fell through, and we moved elsewhere. While in college, he traveled to my school to compete in a game. Since it was a homecoming, he ended up briefly watching the parade. Come on! Other people, he remembers me and turned out as a cool kid. Not only had I been drinking, but I was dressed as a frat, standing next to her. I really shocked myself when he told me about watching me dance badly around in the street as big as a little kid. While attending the house party with my sister, I was looking at pics on the walls taken at parties his friends had thrown back. I was on one side of the pit, and he was on the other side of the big ring. I went to about 20 parties back in the day, and I do not remember ever being anywhere near the same.
Oh, motherfucker.
Friends with a guy and girl who were husbands. We both went to endless family gatherings, but never met. We heard stories about each other, and had never even seen a picture of one another. After 6 years, we finally met and were an item by the end of the year and we came together as a family. When I was a child, I had a lot of dreams about cemetery with a huge clubs and the dreams always freaked me out. In the dreams, there was always something not evil, but something exciting. Fast forward 3 years, I would be about 10, maybe. Anyway, I was out with my mom. We were visiting a German cemetery for as soon as I started getting close to the cemetery, I started to feel very uneasy as well. I remember walking through a small building that led into the cemetery. At this point, I knew that the cross was ready to be lighted. I remember seeing it, and that's when my memory stops. Nothing bad happened. Well, not that I remember.
It's nothing.
I've been there for long.
I won't.
About a year ago, an online friend's cat ran away. He was inconsolable since he grew up with a cat, and he was basically one of his best friends.
Give it your all.
I gave her a call and telling me a long time ago that the cat had run away for 3 days ago and had gotten stuck in a local barbecue restaurant while it was closed for the weekend. I didn't mention it because I figured it would make my friend more upset. 3 days later, the cat comes back, smelling like got stuck in a restaurant for the weekend. My friend swears that he had never run away before, and I could find no record of a supposed cat ran away conversation or chat logs. He never even mentioned there was a My friend used to put up a recurring away message. Back in the day when everything was known.
Come on, guys.
Put up a sentiment. Well, one day, I was walking around my college campus thinking about it, but failing to remember.
You ready?
In my mind, I kept thinking, something for peace, something for
My
peace.
turn.
What the hell is that away message? Right then, some chick on a cell phone walks by.
Don't overdo it.
Yes, it's my turn. I realized this is not a super freaky story, but it made my day at the time. It's not every day someone springs out
Out of here with that bullshit.
I'm not a superstitious or generally spiritual person, but In high school, I was in the
We don't
gym,
have long to get
and we
clear.
usually practiced early
Take
in the morning
Tifa
prior
and
to
get
school
out of here.
starting.
What?
We were inside the
I was
band room
wrong
that
about
day
you.
because it was
This ain't the
fairly
end of the
cold.
line for you
So
or
anyway,
me.
I'm doing my thing, playing the tenor. I turned to pick it up, and I can't find it. There are about 10 people
Look at I'm dead.
My instructor stops us and basically just asks me what the problem is.
When I feel
So
like
several of us start searching around. Can't find it. I say screw it and grab a spare set.
it's okay, son. I
About
still
20
love
minutes
you.
later,
I
the
still
band
love you like
director
a
walks
son.
in, unlocks his office, sits at
Be
his
in the
desk,
pit.
and knocks on the window. I look
Still
up,
love you like
and he
a
picks
son,
up
son.
the mallet off his desk
A
with a
son,
look
son,
like,
son,
what is
son,
this
son.
doing in here?
A son, son.
I could
Sonity,
verify that it
son.
was mine because I marked each set. Nobody had gone in or out. No gap under the door. Locked room. Ended up on the desk. There were 15 of us in the room at that time. And there was a unanimous no. Moment. I was stunned, and one of my buddies came unglued.
You
We
okay?
pretty much canceled the rest of rehearsal right there, and many of us were pretty bugged about it the rest of the day. I couldn't concentrate on anything for almost a week after that.
Back then?
Eventually, my brain just filed it away under unsolved mysteries, and I went on with life.
Never
Oh,
mind about that. Right now,
Hey,
I was
wait,
driving
yo.
home from college one day, and I pulled up at a red light at an intersection. The car in front of me was one of those aqua / steel Honda Civics that were popular in the mid to late 90s. I looked to my right.
easy does it.
The gas station marquee says something like, "Always be aware of your surroundings when you shift." That's not verbatim, but I remember shift being capitalized for some reason. I thought it was kind of peculiar, and that's when I noticed that the car immediately to my right was, in fact, another of the same
are you?
colored Honda Civics. Okay, interesting coincidence. Then I figured, what the hell?
Oh,
How
shit.
funny would it be if? And look in my rearview mirror.
Cloud.
Yep,
There's still
aqua
so
/ teal
much
Civic behind
to be
me.
done.
So I looked to my left. Sure enough, the same car. I'm surrounded by them on all sides.
no.
I chuckle to myself,
Maybe you're
thinking
not.
it's nothing.
Hey, Sailor
The light
Moon!
turns green, and we begin to move.
Mallory,
3
it's
of the
Sailor
Civics moved
Moon!
into the right
He
lane.
lives.
As they're
Finally awake,
traveling
are
next
we?
to me, I noticed that
It's
they have no
Sailor
license
Moon!
plates. There are drivers, and the interiors
What?
are all tan or equine.
Aaron.
Yeah, look at
They all
her.
merge onto a northbound route, and I
That's
continue on
Sailor
my way.
Moon.
For the
Madison!
past
You
15
again.
years, I've maintained that I
Again?
somehow shifted, hey, the Marquis' words,
don't remember?
not mine,
What
into a
about-
dimension
She's
other than the
Sailor
one in
Moon.
which I was born.
Oh.
I bring this up when things seem really off in the
And this
world.
is...
I didn't do no such
Example,
thing. That's how she
Rick
dressed.
In the
Santorum,
Sector 5 slums.
a viable presidential candidate.
You came crashing
Sigh,
through
I
the
really
roof
need
without
to
so
find
much
a way
as a
back to my
lookout
home
below.
dimension. This happened about 15
Fell
years
right
ago.
into my flower bed.
I called my friend
Lucky
up,
for you.
and he wasn't home, so
Like,
I left
really?
a message on his answering machine.
Sorry, I didn't
I
mean
said,
Don't worry about
hey,
it.
it's me.
They're a lot tougher than they
Sorry, I missed
look.
you.
This place.
Call
it
you
has
later.
A kind of
Sailor
power.
Moon.
Bye. And then I hung up and left the house.
Before I forget.
I made no other
By
calls.
evil,
Later
by
Later that day,
moonlight.
he called back, and he
Never
says,
run
wow,
from a
that was
real
quite a
fight.
message you left. Who was that girl you were talking
And
to?
everybody and their
Right?
I was
Not
like,
like mine.
what are you
Right?
talking about?
It's special.
I wasn't talking to any girl.
Mine's not good for
Well,
any
She
of
is
it
the
as
at
it
all.
one
turns out,
named
the
Sailor
message didn't
Moon.
end after I said, bye. I had to go over to his house and listen to this message a few times. After my initial message that I did leave, as quoted above, there was a slight
you
pause,
just don't know how
and
to
it
use it.
continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so with me talking to some girl.
Though,
It was
I
my
really don't
voice,
mind.
but a conversation I
Just
never
having
had
it
with
is
a girl
enough.
whose voice I
Yeah.
didn't
It
recognize.
is a gift from
You could compare it to the message I know I did leave, and the two voices were indistinguishable.
Pretty crazy,
Not
huh?
just the voice,
Us
but,
meeting again like
you know,
this.
talking
You should stay a
mannerisms.
while.
It was my voice.
She's Sailor Moon.
Also,
She is
references
the
to my
one named
occupation and activities
Sailor
were the same.
Moon.
Basically, in this conversation, I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on
Oh,
the car
jeez, I
first,
went 4
which totally
chapters in
correlated
this
to me.
playthrough.
Then the
I
message
didn't even
just
mean
stopped.
to.